Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Wednesday evening webinar. Well, we have a first today because we have the universities of Oxford and Cambridge joining us, and also the students at those two universities, OUMC, Oxford University Malaysia Club, and CUMaS, the Cambridge University Malaysia Society. So we're going to get the official view of applying to and studying Oxford and Cambridge, and we're also going to get the student view as well. So let's welcome our guests for this evening. So we have with us James Brown, who is the Oxford Undergraduate International Recruitment Manager. Roshan, Walkerley, who is the Cambridge Deputy Head of Student Recruitment International. For Oxford, we have the Oxford University Malaysia Club Outreach Officer, Jacx, and he's an undergraduate and he is studying material science at Queen's College. And for Cambridge, we have Ryan Tay, who is the CUMaS president, and he is an undergraduate at St. John's College, and he's studying maths. I feel like I'm introducing University Challenge here. All right, so the way it's going to work today is that James and Roshan will do a joint presentation. There are similarities in the application process, but there are also differences between the two universities. So they'll do a presentation about half an hour. Then Mark Disney and myself will ask some questions of all four of them. Please put your chat in the YouTube feed and we will feed them through. So just a quick one, Mark Disney, many of you met him on our other webinars. Mark, like myself, is at College Tunku Jaffa. He is a past president of the Oxford and Cambridge Society. I'm the current president. And we have, and he's also the deputy head of the sixth form at KTJ. So Mark and I will be picking up your questions, put them into the YouTube chat, and then we'll feed them through to everybody. All right, great. So welcome everybody. So I'm going to pass over to James and Roshan, and they're going to share their presentation with
us. Great, thank you very much, Emma, and hopefully you can now see our slides. Hopefully on the screen, there we go. Great to be with you all this evening. As you've heard, my name is Roshan from the Cambridge Admissions Office, and along with James, who, I don't know if you want to say hi, James.
Yeah, thanks, Roshan. Yeah, hi everybody. Good evening. Good to be here with you all. I'm the International Student Recruitment Manager at Oxford.
So we're going to start this evening's session with giving you some general information about the two universities and then really focusing on the application process. So giving you some advice on the different steps involved in applying to the two universities. And then, as you've heard, there'll be plenty of time for questions and discussion a little bit later on. So let's begin with why you might want to consider applying to either Oxford or Cambridge. Well, the two universities are built on a really strong foundation of academic excellence. Over 800 years of world-leading teaching and research. We talk about the two together because they are so important to the two universities. You, as a student, as an undergraduate at Cambridge or Oxford, would be taught with and would be working alongside academics who are leading experts in the field, regardless of which subject it will be. There are people who are researching, who are exploring, developing and enhancing a variety of different subjects at the forefront of international research. And this feeds into the way that you're taught at the two universities. The terminology might be slightly different. Sometimes we talk about tutorials or supervisions, but the approach is very similar. It's about small group teaching. It's about discussion-based teaching. It's about the opportunity to meet regularly with your supervisor, with your tutor, and to develop a sort of problem-based learning, really, approach to the way that you work. You develop your skills, you develop your approaches through these supervisions, through these discussions. And that small group teaching is then complemented by a series of lectures, by practical classes, and that will of course vary dependent on which subject you end up applying and studying for. But it's about that real approach, that the broad approach of teaching, the practical, the lectures, complemented with these college sessions. Now we talk about the colleges, and we'll talk about more about the college system in a moment, but just to say that the colleges are your home from home, but they're also a really important part of your academic experience at the two universities where some of your teaching takes place. And the experience, I think, is so strong because you have this ability to draw in expertise and resources and facilities from across the wider universities, but also within your colleges as well. And so all of this, the innovative approach to teaching, the ability to work in small groups, but access the wider facilities across the collegiate universities, really do prepare you well for your future, either in employment or, of course, into higher degrees, as indeed many students will pursue masters and PhD programs, doctorates afterwards. So this college system, well, you'll hear lots about colleges today, and later on you'll hear from the two current students about their experiences in college. But what is a college? What does it really mean? Well, your college is, as I say, your home from home in the UK. It's your base really for your academic studies, for your accommodation. You'll have dining facilities, support facilities, maybe sports facilities as well within your college. You're a member of your college and a member of the university as well. And so whilst ultimately your degree comes from the university, your degree will be either awarded by Oxford or by Cambridge, your college has a really important role to play in your academic environment as well. Your supervisions, your tutorials, your tutor, your director of studies is there in your college to support you. Your college, therefore, has a really important role to play, and it's therefore the colleges that make the admissions decisions. There's an admissions tutor or multiple admissions tutors in each college who will review the applications, and it is them that you will typically meet if you are interviewed by either of the universities. And then actually, when you come to the universities, it's this care, it's this support that you receive in the college that is really important to welcome you to the UK, to give you those networks as an international student, to provide the facilities that you need and the academic and pastoral support as well. And all of this provides, we think, a really strong basis for you to concentrate on your studies, but also to have a great time whilst you're in the UK, taking part in sports, societies, and exploring your respective university cities as well. So that's just a brief introduction, but you'll hear lots more about the different universities over the next sort of hour or so. But I'll pass to James now to take more of a deep dive into the application process.
Lovely, thanks, Roshan. So the process for Oxford and Cambridge are actually very similar, the application process. What is also very much in common between the two institutions is that admission is highly competitive. So we do need to look at lots of different pieces of information in order to make a balanced decision about our many applicants. So all of our applications are considered together, they're considered collectively, holistically, with nothing considered in isolation. Now you can see here with this graphic, we do take in, as I say, quite a lot of different data points. We'll be looking at your UCAS form, of course, so we'll be looking on that form, we'll be looking at your academic record. We'll be looking at your personal statement. And of course, we'll also be looking at the reference given to us by your school. Now, in addition, there will also be, for the vast majority of our courses, there'll be admissions or assessment tests. In some cases, there'll be written work for some courses. And the final stage there, the interview stage. Now, all of our courses interview at both institutions. Now, it's important to say that not all applicants are invited to interview. Cambridge typically interviews around 75% of its applicants, and the proportion at Oxford is dependent on the course, but usually more than 90% are actually interviewed. For some, for others, it can be less than 50%, so it really depends on the course. Important to also bear in mind that the interview itself, although it's the final stage, it's not actually the final hurdle as such, because what we do after the interview is then look at all of these other pieces of information that we've gathered, and again we'll consider these collectively and we'll consider these holistically. So the performance at interview alone just doesn't determine the outcome of an application, so also important to remember. We have lots of information on our website about each stage, and of course throughout the rest of this session, we can go into this in a bit more detail. What I'd like to do now, though, is turn our attentions to something which is very, very important, and that is choosing a course. So choosing the right course really is crucial to enjoying your time at university. So it really is important that all of you really do consider all of your options. Consider, explore, even if you think you already know what you want to study. So again, both universities have comprehensive information on their websites relating to all their courses, quite a lot of deep level information about the kind of content, about the kind of things that you'll be, the kind of options you have in terms of courses, the kind of things that you'll be reading and studying. So really do your research. Because they run for 3 or 4 years, it obviously will feel much more enjoyable. Your workload will feel much lighter if you do really genuinely have a passion for the subject that you're studying. So there's a couple of different ways that you can approach choosing a course, and it really does bear thinking about quite closely. So you could approach it by perhaps looking at something which is your favorite subject. So you could think, okay, well, I really love doing this at school. I want to be doing more of that. I want to go deeper into the subject. And so you can look from that perspective. Bear in mind, however, even if that is the case, you'll find that your favorite subject is likely to be taught in quite different ways to what you have experienced up to this point, and covering different areas. Another approach you could take is to combine 2 or 3 subjects. Both universities have combination degrees, and that's a really good opportunity for you to explore perhaps one of your favorite subjects alongside another discipline, or indeed 2 more disciplines, which complement that particular field of study. And it's an opportunity to try something new there. And the final sort of approach you can take is trying something new altogether, or going in deeper with a particular subfield of something you've already studied. You'll find both universities have a very wide range of courses and offer you the opportunity to really specialize in certain areas. So again, just give yourself the opportunity to really thoroughly scrutinize what both offer. And that's the same for all the universities that you're considering and thinking of applying to. Let's look at something very practical now, entry requirements. Something obviously that you really have to pay close attention to, because this is really, once you've decided on your course and the kind of courses that you'd like to apply for at the different institutions, you have to see whether you meet the entry criteria. At Oxford, ours range depending on the course. So for the IB, it's 38 to 40 points with 6s and 7s in subjects taken at the higher level. You can see the A-level scores there. They go from AAA up to A-star, A-star A. And for the STPM, we will expect students to present with 3 A's. Just make sure that you are aware of your specific course, because as I've said, not only will some courses have different entry requirements to others, some of them will have subject-specific requirements. You can see there that also the Cambridge requirements, 42 points, 776 at a higher level for IB. A-levels, A-star AA up to A-star, A-star A, depending on the course, and then the same STPM requirement as Oxford there, the 3 A's. Again, Cambridge courses will have, many of them will have subject-specific requirements too. So it is important that you do look at these, and you're realistic about this. We are looking for students, obviously, who are academically able, that enjoy a challenge, that have a sound sort of knowledge base, and it really is important that you are realistic when it comes to entry requirements, because if your grades or projected grades are going to be below these sorts of areas, below these requirements, it's deeply unlikely that you'll be successful with your application. So let's move on to a little bit more detail about what we're looking for. So a genuine subject interest, this is crucial. You must transmit to us this genuine subject interest throughout the course of that sort of application. So we are looking for students who really, are as passionate about their chosen discipline as our academics and the rest of our students. We're also looking for a good fit between you and the course, and so should you be, actually. This is mutual. So we look for you to be a good fit with a particular course, that your knowledge base is sound, as I mentioned, but also that if you have the potential to go beyond the syllabus and use your knowledge in unfamiliar situations as well. We are looking for students who will thrive in what is a rigorous learning environment. Studying at Oxford and Cambridge, it's a challenge. Also, you have to be aware of the way in which we assess, which is mainly by examination. So again, we're looking for these things to fit. We're looking at potential. I have to say, we're not expecting you to be the finished articles. It really, obviously, is a case that you will develop when you're with us. And so we're looking for your potential. We're looking for your focus and determination, your ability to learn independently, your self-discipline and your self-motivation and commitment to your studies. So these also, these sorts of things can be demonstrated, and your passion and interest for the subject can be demonstrated to us through wider engagement with the subject beyond your school syllabus. Your enthusiasm for new ideas, for reading, for exploration. All these are ways to show us of your commitment to the subject. Okay, and where appropriate, and obviously there are some of our courses that are vocational. So obviously medicine is a good example of that. We will expect also to see that vocational commitment where it's appropriate. Okay, so let's move on to talk a little bit about the actual flow of the application process. Now, applying to Oxford and Cambridge is different to applying to the vast majority of other universities, as I'm sure you're aware. We've already covered how you should, spend a good amount of time choosing your course. And then once you've chosen your course and you've checked the entry requirements, etc., and you're starting with your UCAS form, what you also can do is choose a college if you would like. You can specify a college at either of the institutions, whichever one you're applying to, or you can make an open application. Either is absolutely fine. It is important to know that choosing a college or not choosing a college, absolutely, there's no benefit or disbenefit from either approach. So it's absolutely okay to make an open application if you haven't got a clue which college you'd like to be in. And it is also important to know, certainly at Oxford, that if you apply to a specific college, you might not end up in that college even if you're given an offer anyway. But it's a really nice thing, and we will be exploring more about colleges, so I won't dwell on that right now. So then once you've done that with the form, you also should check any admission test or test and the test registration deadline. Okay, so this is really important. You submit your UCAS form to us by the deadline of the 15th of October, and that is also the deadline for test registration. So if you are required to take a test, which is quite likely, the vast majority of our courses do need this, you will need to register at a local testing centre and show evidence that you've registered for it to us by that same deadline of the 15th of October. Slight variation with the LNAT. Any of you thinking of applying to law, there is slightly earlier deadlines on registration for that particular test, so do look at that. And it really is important that you meet that deadline. Okay, so do be organised. Think about your deadlines in advance. Listen to your counsellors and teachers. This is really very important. Now, for Cambridge, there is the sorry, I've missed the UCAS application. The personal statement, obviously, we know about that, and we'll go into the personal statement in a second. But if you skip to stage 5 there, for Cambridge, there's an additional application questionnaire, which you will have to submit if you are applying to Cambridge. Now, for step 6, you can see here, in some cases, for some of our courses, not so many of them these days, you are usually you are asked for some of them to submit written work. So it is important that, again, you check your emails. Your college who's considering your application will be in touch with you to let you know the information about how to submit your written work. And of course, in early November, you then take your admission test as well. So the admission tests themselves are always held in early November. And then the sort of final stage, if you like, is the interview. If you're shortlisted for interview, that's a very positive thing. They take place at different times in both universities, ranging from, I think it's November and December for Cambridge. It's December at Oxford. And then you will reach our decisions once all the interviews have been completed. And we bring together all the information that we've gathered through the UCAS form, through your test, through your submission of your written work, and we'll then make a highly informed decision about your application. And you tend to hear by mid-January in most cases. So that is the timeline and the process. Hopefully that's shone a bit of a light on that. We'll move on to talk about the personal statement now, because it really is an important starting point for us when we receive your application. So It is often used actually as a point of discussion for interviews. So if you are selected, shortlisted for interview, it's quite likely that they'll ask you perhaps one or two things that may have come up in your personal statement. Obviously, be honest. It's really important for you to talk to us in your own words, your own ideas. If you mention things that you've done or read, you must have actually done them or read them, otherwise you could get caught out in the interview. Be selective, be analytical, and take a critical approach to it. What we're trying to see there, and what you should be trying to showcase, of course, is your critical engagement with the subject. And this is your first opportunity to show us that. It's your first opportunity to give us a sense of who you are academically. And it is also your first opportunity to produce some written work for us. So take your time on this. Listen again to the advice given to you by your tutors, by your counsellors, because of course they are very well experienced and skilled with that, and they'll provide you with some very useful tips. What you must cover in this statement is, of course, your interest in the course. Remember that this statement is going to the 5 universities that you've chosen on your UCAS form. So obviously what you must try and do is speak to all of those different universities. And the actual fact is that you've usually chosen courses that are very similar. So it's actually something you talk about the discipline, of course. So talk to us about that, relevant subjects you've studied, how they link with what you're applying to. And very importantly, show your supercurricular engagement with those with that subject. Show to us and demonstrate to us that you are critically engaged with the subject, that you can analyze this subject, you have an understanding of it, and that this transcends your school curriculum too. And I think this wider engagement, this wider academic engagement with the subject is something which is really crucial to success. It's crucial to success for your application, but it's crucial to success for when you are with us too. So that's something which is really, really important to remember. A note here, extracurricular activities which aren't relevant to the course applied for, we won't consider these for admission to either university. They're really not an important feature of the application process. So please do bear that in mind. We'll just briefly turn our attentions to structuring the personal statement before I pass back over to Roshan. So 80% plus should be focusing on the academic, really. So again, going through those things that I've mentioned, why you want to study the course, the discipline that you're applying to in the different universities, and go into depth. Tell us about things that you've read, watched, visited, listened to. Tell us and reflect on that. Don't just tell us about that, reflect on that. Bring in your own ideas. Tell us why it was interesting. Tell us why maybe you didn't agree with it. Tell us why you did agree with it. Whatever it is, go into some depth. It's a short statement. It's difficult to do that. So this is why you must take time planning, drafting, redrafting, getting other people to have a look at it too. And do take your time on this, because this is an important part of your application. It's the initial stage. So reflect on this, critically engage with the things that you're talking about. You can even talk about the things that you find challenging there. So these are all sort of aspects of the sort of 80% plus academic focus. With the remaining sort of 20 up to 20%, no more, you can focus on the super or extracurricular activities, things that are relevant. Try and bring in things that are relevant. If you do have work experience, if you do have other things that you've done that are relevant to the course you're applying to, bring those in there. But again, just make sure that ratio is correct, and that you don't dwell too much on these extra and supercurricular activities. Okay, I will pass back over to Roshan.
Great, thank you, James. So one of the phrases that we talk a lot about at both universities is supercurricular. Well, what does that mean? Well, supercurricular is all about those activities, those skills, those experiences that are outside of the classroom or outside of your normal high school studies, but relate to the subject that you're studying at the moment or that you're hoping to study at university. Supercurricular is really important for both Oxford and Cambridge. It shows that you're enhancing your skills, you're developing beyond your standard high school curriculum, you're demonstrating your interest, and ultimately you are preparing more effectively for your future studies. And that's why within your personal statement, but also at other points of the application process, we do like to hear that you have undertaken some of these activities, that you have broadened your subject knowledge, and ultimately, as I say, you're going to become a stronger applicant because you're better prepared. And as James talked about earlier on, you can demonstrate that you are a best fit candidate, that the university you're applying to, that the course you're applying to fits well with your interests and your motivations, and that you fit well with it, that you have demonstrated you've taken your thinking outside of the classroom, outside of your day-to-day studies, and brought in some other areas as well. So when we talk about these other areas, well, what do we mean? What are the types of activities? Well, it really is up to you. But we know that it has been particularly challenging recently. We know the opportunity to gain experiences or to attend different things in person has unfortunately not been possible. But what is possible is the opportunity to engage with a wide variety of online resources. Two websites to mention are ones from the two universities. So HE Plus is a Cambridge initiative, Oxplore is an Oxford initiative. And both of these websites are packed full of ideas, of big questions, of topics to have a think about that may be useful in your preparations. There's also ideas that are linked to particular subjects, and then other links that you can click through from. So I'd highly recommend having a look at them, HE Plus and Explore. And of course, everything here, everything on this slide is accessible online wherever you're connecting in from. TED Talks, you may have seen some of these in the past. They're really thought-provoking, really interesting topics that can maybe offer a new perspective on something you're familiar with, or perhaps introduce a topic that you haven't come across before. And then there's various different academic journals, of course, linked to particular subject areas. There are some really useful podcasts at the moment. Podcasts are becoming such a great way, maybe if you're out for a walk and you just want something to listen to engage your mind and get you thinking about a new topic, they're perhaps there just for that. So have a look online, start to think about what your subject is doing at the moment. What are the contemporary questions? What are the research questions within your subject area at the moment? And if you look on both university websites, you'll find out about some of the research topics that our academics are looking at the moment, and you might want to read through some of their latest findings as well. So there's lots that you can do in terms of supercurricular activities at the moment. Yes, it's not quite the same as some of these in person, but there's a huge amount online. And I would suggest starting to write down some of the sources and take a list of things that you've read, because as you've heard about some of this, you'll want to reflect upon in your personal statement. There might be other areas that you talk about at an interview as well. So good to document some of the things that you've been able to do, the things that you've been reading as well. So the next part of the application process, which James mentioned earlier on, is a Cambridge specific, and this is called the SAQ. So at Cambridge, we obviously use all the information that we receive through UCAS, but we do ask a few extra questions which help our admissions tutors get a really good picture of you as an applicant, of the school that you're in at the moment, and some of the topics that you're working on in your high school studies. So it gives us this consistent information about every applicant, wherever in the world you are applying from. The SAQ is something that we will email over to you. There'll be a link to complete the form online. Once you have submitted through UCAS, it normally takes a couple of days, and then you'll get this from us. And it will take about an hour or so to complete. You'll need just a few details of your current studies. There's a really useful guide on the website that you can read over in advance. You can prepare everything you need to complete the form. One thing that we do give you the opportunity to do as part of this additional questionnaire is to complete a Cambridge-specific personal statement. As you know, when you apply through UCAS, you have one personal statement for up to 5 applications, up to 5 different universities. But we know that some of our courses at Cambridge are slightly different to what's offered at other UK universities. And so writing a personal statement that covers our quite unique programme and compared to your other 4 choices may be quite difficult. And that's why we give you this opportunity to submit an extra personal statement which can be tailored specifically to the course that you have applied for at Cambridge. This is completely optional. So it's totally up to you. If you have applied for a course that you think is a bit different, or you feel your personal statement doesn't, your main UCAS personal statement doesn't accurately reflect what you're applying for with us, then you can make this personal statement as a separate statement as part of your SAQ, but there's no requirement to do so. So say it takes about an hour to fill in. You then we'll do it all online, and you just need to pay an application fee at the end and send it off, and your application won't be considered by our admissions tutors until we have received this. So really important that you keep an eye on your emails, that you check them regularly after you've submitted via UCAS, and ensure this is completed promptly so everything can be reviewed. Now, there's a few more things that you will do after you submit your UCAS application, and these do vary between the two universities, but also between the colleges and between the different subjects that you may be applying for. So it's really important to check online, to check with the college admissions teams as to what is applicable for you. But typically, you'd have to do one of these three tasks. So it might be what we call a pre-interview assessment, or there could be an assessment at interview, or it might be that an assessment is made of your written work, which you would need to submit. So the first one of these, well, a pre-interview assessment. Well, these admissions assessments, admissions tests, are used by our admissions tutors to be able to compare you with other candidates from all over the world, maybe studying different qualifications, different high school programs. They give us a chance to look at the scores in the year, to see how you rank, how you compare with other applicants. The tests are subject specific, so they will build on some of your high school studies. They are designed to be challenging. There will be questions in these written assessments that perhaps you haven't come across before, topics that you're not familiar with. They are designed to challenge you to take your learning, to take your assessment to a different level. And so, just rest assured, you've just got to give it your best effort. There'll be some questions you'll be able to answer straight away, others that will be more challenging. But they are, as I say, designed to give the admissions tutors time to compare, the opportunity to compare between different candidates. These admissions assessments are in some courses. So, for example, if you are applying to the medical program, you'll typically need to complete the BMAT, so the biomedical admissions test, whereas other subjects don't have a pre-interview assessment. For those that do, it will normally take place in the first week of November, and you'll need to register, if it's for the BMAT for medicine, by the 1st of October this year, to be able to complete your assessment on time in November. For the other courses, the other subjects, you have until the 15th of October. So that covers some of the subject areas. The other subject areas that have an assessment will be held as part of the interview process, so the at-interview assessments. With these, you don't need to register separately, and they will be facilitated as part of your interview process, perhaps on the same day or certainly within the same week. And so you'll receive more details from your college admissions office closer to the time. These you'll be able to complete remotely. And then the final part is the submitted work, the written work. Now, this is for some subjects, particularly in the arts and humanities, where our admissions tutors do like to see your written style. They like to see what you're doing at the moment, how you're writing, how you're developing, and typically this would be something you have already completed as part of your high school studies. It might be an essay, it could be a bit of coursework, maybe 1,000 words, 2,000 words, EPQ or IPQ, something like this that you have already written, it's already been marked and can then be submitted. And it just means the tutors get that opportunity to have a look at your writing style and may well ask you about it at interview. So really important to check what's required for your subject, either an assessment in November, an assessment as part of the interview, or perhaps some additional work to be submitted. And if it's architecture you're applying for, it would typically be a portfolio. So this brings us on to interviews. Interviews are held online this year, and they're designed to give the admissions tutors the chance to meet with you, to hear more about your interests, your motivations, your preparation for the course, but also to give you the chance to experience a supervision or a tutorial. The interviews are designed in a format that gives you the opportunity to discuss, to participate, to share your thoughts, and to solve a problem. Depending on the course, depending on the college, you may have more than one interview. They'll typically be around 30 up to 45 minutes in duration, So sometimes it's one, sometimes it's multiple interviews. But really, they are interactive. They're designed to see your interest, your aptitude for the course, and for you to demonstrate some of your skills. So with the interviews, they are going to be challenging, a bit like the admissions test. There'll be some questions, some topics that you are familiar with, others that you may not be familiar with. But it's about sharing your thinking, about sharing your approach, and questioning, and the tutors, the admissions interviewers are there to sort of support you and coach you through this process, just as they would in a supervision or a tutorial. The interviews are also a great opportunity for you to ask the colleges and the university questions as well that you may want to find out more about. So it does absolutely work both ways. So the interviewers may ask you about things that you have written about in your personal statement. They might talk about your supercurricular experiences. They might talk about your written work that has been pre-submitted. But ultimately, they're there to really give you the opportunity to talk about why you're a good applicant for the course and to demonstrate that you're a good fit for the university. They are just one part of the interview of the admissions process, however. They're not the final hurdle. They're not used on their own. They are combined with all of the other approaches, the holistic approach that James talks about earlier on, that comes together, and the interview is just a part of that. So for students applying for 2022 entry, applying in 2021, interviews will be held online for the two universities. Platforms are to be confirmed. The exact platform will be released in due course, and both universities will have more guidance and videos and explanatory details on quite what you need in terms of getting the tech set up and everything ready to go. However, I guess the key point to note for this year is that the purpose, the format of the interviews is similar to what has happened previously. It's just that we've moved them online due to current travel restrictions. Now, what happens beyond that is to be confirmed, but certainly for 2022 entry for both Oxford and for Cambridge, your interviews will be held remotely. You'll be able to dial in from wherever you're applying from or wherever you're studying at that time and be able to be interviewed accordingly. So we're approaching the end of the presentation section of today's session, so we can move to your questions very soon. But just to add a couple of websites, both Oxford and Cambridge University websites have got lots of information on, so you'll be able to find out more about the material covered in today's talk, the application process in more detail, as well as get some student perspectives there as well. But on that note, I think it's time that we wrap up and that we pass back to Emma, who I know will introduce the question part of today's session.
Thank you. Yep, I think everyone is joining us. We've got lots of really great questions, and Mark's joined us as well. All right, Mark, do you want to, what we're going to do is we're going to handle the admissions questions, and then we're going to go and ask some more general questions about some of the other things. So let's answer your specific admissions questions first, Mark.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you very much for that, Roshan and James. That was really detailed. We've got a number of questions coming in through the chat. I think there's almost 200 people watching live. The first question that came in is from someone who is considering reapplying, and how would you best suggest that a student make their choice of college, or does that matter? I think there's a slight fear that if they reapply, that their name will be in the system already, and as somebody who didn't make it last time. Could you just explain the process for students who are thinking of taking a year out and then reapplying in the following year? Maybe James, if you could kick us off with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So lots of, a reasonable amount of students do reapply, having previously been unsuccessful. Relating to the college aspect of it, that's not anything to worry about. You can either specify a college, or as we sort of described in the presentation, you can make an open application where you will then be assigned to a college who has less applications for that particular course. The one thing I would flag up from our perspective is that it is important to include any sort of new information or information that would actually discern the two applications. So we do need to hear about some new information. Why is that candidate reapplying, or what information, what sort of skills, what kind of things that they have done that have been different from the previous application? So that is important for us to hear about. That's from our perspective. Roshan, I don't know if you'd like to add to that.
Yeah, I'd agree with everything that James has said. That reassurance that just because you've applied before, that isn't going to have a bearing. You know, we look at every application individually in each application cycle. And just to pick up on that point really around college choice and open applications, your chance, if you like, of receiving an offer is the same whether you apply directly with a college choice or whether you make an open application. And I think for many international students who haven't had the chance to visit the UK, who haven't had a chance to visit the two cities and the different colleges, you know, do make an open application if you're not sure. The colleges have a lot more in common with one another than they do differences. Of course, if there's one college you really don't like for whatever reason, then you probably do want to make an application to a particular college. On the small chance, in the case of Cambridge, it would be a 1 in 29 chance that you might end up in the one that you're less keen on. So if there's one you really don't like, then you know, bear that in mind. But just to reassure that many students every year are successful who make open applications. And as I think James talked about in the presentation, if you apply to one college, actually through what's called the pool system, you may end up being considered by another college in any case. So just that reassurance, really, you will be treated fairly if you make an open application, and treated fairly and on your individual application alone if you do reapply. We won't look back at what happened last year.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. A couple more, but all to do with applications. We've got one in from a prospective PhD student thinking of applying for economics. Can the GRE or the GMAT be waived, or is it compulsory?
Shall I pick up on that one?
Thank you,
I would have to check for our economics program at Cambridge. Generally, we for the doctoral applications, we look at quite a range of factors. I suppose in some ways it is similar to the undergraduate approach in that it is holistic, and the departments all have their own criteria in discussion with a potential supervisor. But I don't have the specifics of the economics with me, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think Eugene, you need to check on the website. I'm sure the details would be there. He actually had a follow-up, which was that for postgrad study, will both universities offer conditional or give conditional offers if the applicants will only graduate in December? So I guess, yeah.
I'll just flag up the fact that at Oxford, it's organised slightly differently to Cambridge. So we have separate offices for undergraduate and postgraduate studies. So I only cover undergraduate, I'm afraid. So I would urge that particular inquirer to look at the full information we have on our graduate admissions web pages.
Okay, we'll do that. And just one last one before I hand back to Emma, and I'm conscious that we've not heard from Ryan and Jacx yet, but it's this. You mentioned earlier on IB and A levels and STPM. Are things like Australian matriculation, are they because it's a 1-year course, or Canadian, the Canadian pre-U, are they considered as subjects that you can apply for or apply with rather?
Shall I start again?
Yeah.
Okay. So sure. We accept many different international qualifications, as does Cambridge, I know. So it's very important that for students who are pursuing other qualifications than the ones we covered in the presentation, do look at our international qualifications web pages for the equivalencies. We accept many different qualifications from around the world. Some we don't, so it is important that candidates do check. But we have full listings of both the curricula that we accept for direct entry, as well as the relative levels, grades that they need to achieve. So international qualifications part of the undergraduate admissions website for us.
Okay, and maybe I'll just pass that on, because we have another student asking about the UEC, which is the Chinese papers out here, and I assume the same thing would be true of that.
We don't at Oxford. We don't actually accept the UEC.
UEC is not interesting. And at Cambridge,
Yeah, from the Cambridge perspective, the same. We don't either. Worth saying, really for us, we absolutely do accept a wide variety of international qualifications, but there are a few qualifications, a few high school systems globally where the studies are typically 1 year less, and in those cases, students may need to supplement their high school program, their high school diploma, with some additional qualifications. So it might be taking an AP, for example, from the College Board. It might be taking an international baccalaureate high level certificate, 1 or 2 subjects, or perhaps 1 or 2 A levels in addition to their high school programs. But all the information is on our website. And just to say, and this is the case, across the universities, the various different admissions teams, both centrally and in the colleges, are more than happy to hear from students who perhaps have slightly different qualifications, or maybe have taken some high school studies in one country and then moved elsewhere and have a different mix. If you're in any doubt, please do get in contact, please do reach out, and we can advise as to whether your qualifications would be competitive or whether you may need to take an additional qualification to make a strong application.
Great, thank you for that, Roshan. Emma, back to you.
Okay, so a couple of questions about qualifications that you need, a couple more. So one is from somebody, Shipone, who wants to do NatSki, leading to chemical engineering. So she's saying that she's only got 2 STEM subjects, STEM subjects. She's got chem and maths. Is that a disadvantage that she's only got chem and maths for NatSki in Cambridge?
So for the natural sciences program at Cambridge, students come in with a variety of different subject backgrounds. So some will have chemistry, maths, some will have biology, chemistry, some will have physics and biology, for example. It's worth saying that students who, on average, more students will receive an offer who have 3 sciences or 2 sciences and a mathematics. They tend to be more competitive for the admissions tutors. And so the strongest possible preparation is 2 sciences and maths-based subjects. Obviously, that isn't possible in every school, in every curriculum, and so students will be considered based upon what they're able to study. But it is worth saying that generally a strong applicant will have probably 3 science or maths-related subjects.
Okay, great. So talking of strong applications, how important is it that you've got a good number of A's at your SPM? And I guess the same would apply for IGCSE.
So, sorry, I'll go quickly for the Cambridge perspective and pass to you, James. For us, we don't have a minimum requirement. So for any qualification taken at sort of age 16 or equivalent, we will look at them. We will encourage, we do require students to provide details of any qualifications they have taken at that point, but it's not a key factor for us. We don't have a minimum score, a minimum requirement at that point. We're looking with a greater weighting on the predictions and the achievement in the final high school qualifications at age 18 or equivalent. James?
Yeah, it's exactly the same at Oxford. Yeah, no different.
Okay. And how do you approach retakes? Let's start with James.
Yeah, so retakes, we do prefer, it is fair to say that we do prefer students to take all of their examinations in one sitting. We understand there can be extenuating circumstances for some students, especially given the circumstances we've all been facing over the last sort of couple of years or so. So, of course, if we're provided with information by the school, by the counsellor, by the candidates themselves, relating to extenuating circumstances, we will certainly look at that. But I do have to say that in general, we do prefer, in normal circumstances, for all examinations to be taken at the same time.
And for the Cambridge perspective, exactly the same. Ultimately, the workload, is busy at both universities, and so the admissions tutors are looking to see that students can cope with the demands that will be presented. And one of the ways to do that is to see a student has achieved well in all of their subjects in the first take. So, very, very similar approach, really, for us.
Okay, great. Mark, should we move on? I really want to bring in Jacx and Ryan. Should we
I
ask
think
Jacx
so.
and Ryan
Yes.
about what they thought about the process?
Exactly. Again, I think we should we'll start. Should we start with Jacx from Oxford, the senior institution? So maybe Jacx would like to begin. If you could explain, because obviously you understand the kind of students who are watching this. I mean, you've gone through the same thing. Give them some sense of how it was for you and how the experience, how you approached the whole experience of applying.
Mm-hmm. Yep, thank you, Mark. After talking with other Malaysians who are in Oxford, because I didn't want to just give my own perspective, so I did collect some input from like my friends, and for us, we believe that the most challenging part in applying was actually just choosing to apply in the first place, because a lot of us were unsure if we were Oxbridge material or if we were Oxford material, and also just comparing ourselves with other people who were applying. And we also thought that it was quite distressing, especially if you see, your friends who scored better in exams and stuff, and you just start questioning, your ability, or like, will I get in, or would it just be a waste of like a spot on UCAS? But I think what I would want to let other people watching now know that there is no real Oxford material student or a Cambridge material student. I think if you do well and you are passionate about your subject, you can make it. And I'm pretty sure Oxbridge is also very committed, into admitting a wide range of students from diverse backgrounds. As long as you are suited for the university and you do have the grades, I'm sure you should apply, and I hope you make it. And yes, do not be afraid.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, nothing ventured, nothing gained. What about you, Ryan? What would you like to say on that topic?
Oh, I think it's exactly the same as what Jacx said. I totally agree with him. Like, the first step to actually getting into Oxbridge is to actually apply. And if you don't dare to take that first step, then you're not going to get in, obviously. So I guess it's more of building that sort of confidence in yourself that, if you're doing well in school, you're having the appropriate grades, good enough for the course requirements at Cambridge and Oxford. And, you have this sufficient level of passion for your subject, and you really want to explore how far you can go with your subject, then Oxford and Cambridge is definitely for you. So I would say at this point of time, if you're thinking of applying, then really do look at yourself and think, am I fit for Oxbridge? And, make that brave first step. And then, you never know where it can take you. So that's what I would say on that matter.
Yeah, thanks. Can I just have a quick follow-up there, Ryan? I mean, obviously you guys were at schools where, they had a track record of sending people to Oxbridge. They had teachers who knew how the system worked. Friends of yours or other Malaysians of your age who are not from that kind of background, right? Who are maybe in government schools, they're not in international schools. Is there a route for those kinds of students to make it? What advice would you give them? Maybe Jacx, Ryan, if you could kick off for me.
Sure. The admissions process is no doubt very challenging for both universities, both Oxford and Cambridge alike. But I wouldn't say it's impossible, nor is it too much more difficult to apply if you're not from a top international school or a top 6 form of sorts. I would say there are a lot of resources online that you can find that would help with your applications process. I know CUMaS and OUMC, both of our societies, do provide outreach help. So we just had some outreach events recently that would give students more of a perspective on what it is like to apply, and some very important details as to what you should know before applying and what you should consider. So I would say there are a lot of resources online. So don't hesitate to look around, Google, type something on Google. Things will pop up for you, and I'm sure that there are things that would help.
Sure. I mean, contact the Oxford and Cambridge Society, contact CUMaS, contact OUMS. If you have specific queries about that. Do you have any thoughts on that, Jacx?
Yep. No, I totally echo with what Ryan said just now. We do have people who are in Oxford currently who are not from KY, KTJ, or international schools in the UK. So, for example, we have students from Sunway, from HELP, from Taylor's. So it definitely is not impossible to get into Oxbridge if you aren't from, these elite institutions. Even in the UK, we have more students who did not go to private school who are getting in. So I think as a whole, Oxbridge is changing. And if you do have the grades, you can get in, and it is a possibility.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, and I think Roshan and James might comment on that, because it does seem in the last year or two, it's fairly recent, isn't it, that there are seems to be a lower proportion of privately educated students going to Oxford, according to the stats I saw. But anyway, Emma, can I pass back to you?
I mean, James and Roshan, is it true that Oxford and Cambridge are less white middle class public school?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think both institutions, obviously, there are perceptions about both universities, but as we've just been touching on, things have changed, really quite to a large extent over the last few years or so. And as Jacx referred to there at Oxford, we have sort of 68, nearly 70% of students now from non-private schools from the UK. So that's obviously a big change. And indeed, you'll find both institutions to be incredibly diverse in terms of their student bodies, both in terms of nationality, but in many other ways too. And so I think it really, one of the things I've noticed in talking with our international student ambassadors this year, for example, is that how their view of Oxford was so different to their reality. And this is something they've really, really described, and very much about the diversity and also diversity of character. I think a lot of people think that Oxbridge students are certain characters. They're really not. There's such a broad range. So I think it's really important for all of you who are watching to be aware of that.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And the admissions tutors, they're looking for diversity. Diversity of thought is so important. Your seminars, your discussion classes will be so much more interesting, will be so much more beneficial, and will help your learning when there's people from a variety of backgrounds, from a variety of different nationalities, challenging the thought process. And that's something that the two universities have seen over recent years. So yeah, as you've heard, both universities have become much more diverse in their intake. At Cambridge, around about 25% of our undergraduate student body are international. At postgraduate level, it's around 50%, and there are students from over 110 different nationalities that make up the student body. So as a university community, and indeed as a city, Cambridge is home not only to ourselves, but also to another university. So there's a lot of young people, there's a lot of international students around, and there's a lot happening in the city, and it's changed. It's incredibly welcoming. And I think with all the support that you get from the two universities as an international student, arriving a bit early, having support within your college. It'll be interesting to hear from Ryan and Jacx how they found the experience of transitioning to the UK. But I think have put in a lot more in recent years to help that process, to make it smooth across both universities, really welcoming a broader mix of students than ever before.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, the members that we have in our society here, just the diverse range of people who have had different routes to Oxbridge. It's not all private schools in Malaysia or in the UK, and then they've got their, people have gone many different routes, and I just think, just reiterate, have a go. There's lots of resources out there to help you from our society, CUMaS, OUMC, the universities, and the links to lots of those are at the bottom of the feed. Jacx, are you not having your outreach coming up soon this weekend?
Yes, Emma, thank you for the plug. Yes, Oxford University Malaysia Club, or OUMC, will be having our annual outreach program, and it would be on the 31st of July, which is just 3-4 days away. And it will be live streamed on our Facebook page. So if you are not following us, please search us up, Oxford University Malaysia Club on Facebook, and see you guys there.
Okay, great. So Roshan actually had a good question for both of you. As international students, how easy was it to transition to the UK in these famous institutions, and what support did you get from your college and the university? Let's ask Ryan first.
Thanks for the question, Roshan. For me, it was slightly different because I did my A levels in sixth form in the UK actually. So I actually went over much earlier than someone who applied from Malaysia would. So I had slightly more time to acclimatize to things in the UK, I would say. In terms of going to Cambridge itself, like transitioning from a college in the UK to Cambridge, I would say there was a lot of support given in both my college and provided by the university itself. So in terms of college support, everyone in college gets a tutor and a director of studies. So the director of studies is in charge of your academic progress at college, and your tutor is in charge of your pastoral support. So you always have someone to talk to, someone higher up which could help you. If you're having difficulties, getting used to the things at university. Apart from that, there were many clubs and societies that I could join at university, like CUMaS itself. So I managed to find my crowd, I would say. I was able to find people that I could vibe with. So I didn't feel like I was too far away from home, things slowly, I slowly got used to things, and the distance is an issue at times, and then you do get homesick, but you just got to keep at it and remember that you're there for a reason. I think that's what's important.
Jacx?
Yep. Just adding on a bit, every college has an international rep, at least in Oxford. So what they do is they cater to the needs of international students. Maybe they would organize or like inform you on like how to get to the airport, or just things like how to set up your bank account when you first get to the UK, things like that. You would get maybe an international freshers pack, which has just like information on like what you should do and stuff like that. Of course, this doesn't apply to all colleges, but it did apply to my college at least. So speaking from my personal experience, and I also know of some colleges who have international events. So like during Freshers Week, when everyone has just arrived, they actually have events just for international students to like meet other international students. And also for Muslim students, they also have non-alcoholic events. So I thought that was really, really nice, and especially for those who do not consume alcohol. So what I would like to say is there is a crowd for you in Oxford, and there are like people who are similar to you. So do not be afraid. I'm sure that you can find people who are, share the same interests as you and who are similar to you. Yep.
Okay, great. Just thinking a bit more about applying. So Ryan and Jacx, what do you wish you had known when you were beginning this process? What do you wish you had known at the time that you now know? Jacx?
Yeah, I think the main thing I wish I would have known is to not be afraid to ask. Just please reach out to OUMC. We are a dedicated club of Malaysian students and alumni of Oxford University, and we really want more Malaysians to get into Oxford. And we would love to help read through your personal statement. We would love to help give interview advice and, stuff like that. So just reach out to us. Do not be afraid. And number two, maybe not as serious, but to choose a college if you have a preference, because at the end of the day, if you are, Oxbridge worthy, you would get in. You might be put to a different college, but if you have a preference, I would say apply to the college, because there is no harm in applying to the college you want. If you are going to get in, you will get in. So yes, please do apply to college.
Ryan?
Yeah, I'll have to echo what Jacx said in terms of choosing a college. I think having finished 1 year in Cambridge, I realized that you do spend a lot of time in your college as a student. So you do spend, I would say, maybe 75% of your time in college. So it's the place where you wake up every day. At least in first year, you usually stay on site. So you do wake up in college and you make most of your friends in college. So it's this sense of community that exists within the wider university. And I think that's something that you should consider, not just in terms of the benefits that the college could bring to you in your everyday life, because there are advantages and disadvantages to different colleges, but also in the sense of how how you feel at a certain college, that really makes a difference. So every day when you wake up, then you're ready to study and you're pumped to go. And if you're in a college that you don't really enjoy in terms of the environment, then I would say that would affect your life at Cambridge or Oxford. So if you have a college in mind, if you have a college you prefer, please do apply to that. I think I cannot stress that enough.
Thanks, Ryan. Before we just move on to, we've got a whole bunch of more of other prepared questions, but just coming through the feed, maybe I'll just clear this up for Tinkerbell and Diraj. Tinkerbell asks whether Oxford or Cambridge, Oxbridge have any partner universities where they can begin the course. I think the answer to that is no. Oxford and Cambridge, you have to go there. It's not like Nottingham or Southampton here. And the other question about does Oxford and Cambridge provide full scholarships for needy international students? And again, I don't think the universities do, but there are scholarships available, and I'm sure some of our speakers might want to comment on that.
I can just sort of dive in there briefly. Yeah, you're quite right, Mark. There's very limited full scholarships available at Oxford, but there are some for international students. There are a handful every year, which actually are comprehensive scholarships. We have something called the Reach Scholarship, which and there's a couple of others too. And this can vary year to year. So I would urge and advise anybody watching who is thinking about this particular subject to look at the financial pages of our website, just to scrutinise what's on offer, but also essentially bear in mind that these can change year to year and that you can make a sort of an application for financial support. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Roshan, but I think finally, just really to be realistic about that, it's highly competitive, obviously, very few of them. And I think generally that's the picture across the United Kingdom in relation to undergraduate studies in general, certainly for our institution.
Absolutely, yeah. The funding that is available from the university, or in some cases from some individual colleges, is generally quite limited. In some cases, it may be a 50% scholarships. The students would still need to find funding for the remaining part. There is a little bit more funding available at postgraduate level, both for doctoral programs and to a lesser extent non-doctoral programs. But again, it is competitive, and certainly for the postgraduate scholarships, students do need to make an application early. So some of our funding deadlines for postgraduate are in December, whereas the actual course deadline to apply may not be until March. So just to bear that in mind, if you want to be considered at postgraduate level for a university scholarship, really the earlier you can apply, the better. So you can meet all of the deadlines for all the possible sources of funding.
Great.
And one final, actually, if I may, again, just dive in there, is obviously just make sure that you're fully familiar with the scholarship opportunities locally as well. Really important. Many of our international students are able to access scholarships in their home countries. So just make sure you are fully up to speed with all those opportunities too.
Yeah. So I think anybody out there who is thinking of scholarships, Emma mentioned this at the beginning. I think we're going to be posting it on the website, Emma, is that right, at some point? But we've got
So our secretary, Faisal Arif, has done an amazing job with listing the scholarships that are available in Malaysia. And I failed miserably to edit our website and put it on there this afternoon. So I'll get around to that in the next few days. So check that out. It's a very useful list. Obviously, lots of requirements. It is limited at undergraduate level, but it does give you a starting point. But actually, I mean, OUMC CUMaS have schemes as well to help B40 candidates, right? So Ryan, do you want to tell us about the CUMaS scheme?
Yep, definitely, Emma. So this scheme that we have to support financially less privileged students, we just launched it this year, actually. So we launched it at our outreach event 2 Saturdays ago. So it's called the Cambridging Fund. And what we are trying to do with this fund is to sponsor the bulk of the application fees for at least 15 Malaysian applicants to Cambridge. So what we understand is that some people may find the application fees, such as the interview fee and the COPA fee or the SAQ for this year, expensive, and this might dissuade them from making that first step, which is applying. So we want to be able to support them in that aspect, to be able to allow them to, take that first step. On top of that, for selected applicants, what we will do is we will give them a student mentor from Cambridge, so a current Malaysian Cambridge student, so who will give them guidance on the applications process and help them with admissions tests, their personal statement, their interview. So this would increase their chances of getting in. What we are basing our selection process on is academic ability. So you definitely need the grades to get in. So we do need some evidence with regards to that in terms of like predicted grades or teacher references. We are also only offering this scheme to households which are earning less than 100,000 ringgit per annum. So it's slightly more than the B40 threshold, but yeah, it's including the B40 threshold, as well as a candidate needs to demonstrate passion for the subject. So we do require them to submit an essay or a mini personal statement of sorts for us to be able to gauge this passion. So yeah, we did open applications already, and they will be closing on the 15th of August. So to apply, just pop over to CUMaS.org, which is our website, and more details on it will be on the website. I also would like to thank Emma and Oxford and Cambridge Society for all their help in sharing this information out to the public. The more people who know about it, the more likely we'll be able to help someone who really needs it.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thanks, Ryan. And on a similar related topic, if you look at the bottom of the YouTube link, you will see lots of hyperlinks for you to click on, and that will help you navigate around OUMC, CUMaS, our society, and a whole variety of links connected with Oxbridge if you're a Malaysian student. So please avail yourselves of those. They are a mixture of, some of them are links to YouTube. We've got ex-students, we've got talks. There are all sorts of things that, if you are serious about applying to Oxford and Cambridge, you should be doing this kind of thing yourself. You are, in a sense, a self-selecting elite, right? So, if you need huge amounts of help in a way with the application, then maybe it's not for you. So, so you need to take the initiative. There's lots of information out there. Ryan and Jack and their buddies over in Oxbridge have been fantastically helpful. So take advantage of all this. Back to you, Emma.
Yep. So Jacx, what's the OUMC scheme that's similar to the CUMaS one?
Yep, I won't take too long. So basically it's the same as the CUMaS scheme. We just have a different name for it. So it's called OUMC for short, which is Oxford Malaysia application scheme. So also we will be covering application fees, and we will also have a student mentor help you throughout the process. So yes, please do check our website, and all the links and descriptions are there. Yeah.
Okay, great. So just one quick one about while we're on fees. If England goes back down into lockdown, or if face-to-face lessons are not allowed again, will there be a fee reduction? How does COVID work at Oxford and Cambridge? How the SOPs? James?
Yeah, so to be blunt and direct, there won't be any fee reductions in the event of that. However, we are very confident that the teaching will go ahead as normal in the upcoming academic year. One of the benefits is of Oxford and indeed Cambridge is, of course, the small group sizes and the way in which we teach in our tutorial system. So we don't anticipate any issues. Of course, we all know that things can change, and of course we will be very closely watching that and assessing whether there'll be any requirement should circumstances change. However, what we've also found over the past year is that we've been able to take, even during sort of a more tricky periods, we've been able to take a kind of a blended approach anyway. So some of our tutorials been able to continue in person in combination with the online sort of lectures. So we're confident that it will be able to go ahead as normal in the coming year. But just to reiterate, really, it won't affect any sort of fee status, regardless of what does come to pass.
All right.
Okay. Thanks. I mean, there's another question, Emma, I'd like to address either to Roshan or to James, which is coming from someone called Not in Use. Will I be at a disadvantage for Oxford applying for medicine if I only have 6, 8 or 9s at IGCSE, I guess that means, despite having 4 A-star predictions? So one, I think there's a two-part question. How difficult is it for international students to get into Oxbridge for medicine specifically? Obviously, we're aware of the limitation in places. And do you guys look at IGCSE, GCSE results when you're making your determination of who to give offers to, or is it purely A levels?
Roshan, would you like to? Oh, I can start. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So, part one. So, as you know, there is a limit imposed by the British government in relation to places for international students on our medicine programme. That's the case for all universities offering medicine. So, of course, it is more competitive for international students. It is more difficult to gain an offer of a place. That's undeniable. To go to the second part of the question, no. As Roshan mentioned earlier, in relation to some of the one-year programs and courses, and indeed the sort of IGCSEs and equivalents, it's not an important part of the application. We don't have any clear stipulation for grades achieved. So, of utmost importance, of course, the predicted grades for A levels or equivalent. That's exactly what we're focusing on, and medicine is no different there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, nothing to add from the Cambridge perspective, exactly the same. And as has been mentioned both by Mark and by James, it's the UK government that has this cap on places for international medical students, and therefore it is competitive. There's no sort of shying away from that. And so, those students who apply for medical programs will need a strong performance throughout the admissions process, whether that's an admissions assessment, i.e. the BMAT, or interview, and with their qualifications as well. It is a competitive program.
I'd like to bundle together lots of questions about the super curriculum, and should people be volunteering? What kind of things should they be doing? So I know you've addressed that quite a lot. So could you just give an example? Say so maybe Oxford, you do law. What kind of super curriculum things are you looking for? Maybe Cambridge, if you address medicine, just to give people an idea of what is important. What do you mean by that word super curriculum that's so important? And then I really would love to hear from Ryan and Jacx of, what did you do extra in your applications above getting stellar exam results? So, James,
shall I sorry. Oh yeah, I can start just to say for medicine, one of my top tips at the moment is actually to have a look at undertaking virtual work experience. We know, and this has been of course the case for applicants worldwide, that it's been really hard to undertake work experience in the last year, 18 months, as we would normally expect. And in a normal year, that sort of some sort of work experience, ideally clinical if possible, would be really advantageous. That's not the case this year. Virtual is the way to go, and there's a really good virtual work experience offered by the Brighton and Sussex Medical School. I'd highly recommend having a look into that. That's one of the supercurricular activities I would say for any medical applicants that can really stand out.
Okay, thank you.
And yeah, from our perspective, of course, given the circumstances students have been in recent times, it has made it considerably more difficult for students to demonstrate work experience and indeed extracurricular and supercurricular sort of engagement than previous times. I would echo what Roshan was saying. Look at online opportunities for work experience. I think we always go back to the idea that looking at online resources, engaging with online resources, reading, really, read deeply, I think is the advice, rather than necessarily than read widely. And I think that and tutors are very aware that these are not normal times. Students haven't had the opportunities that they have had previously. So therefore, when they're looking at applications, they are mindful of that. So I wouldn't necessarily put too much emphasis and pressure on yourselves in these regards for this coming cycle. But nevertheless, please do engage in those sort of supercurricular ways, in the academic ways, wherever possible, beyond your school curriculum.
All right.
That's great.
Ryan?
Right. So I applied for maths, and the things outside the curriculum that I actually did was a lot of competition. So I actually joined a lot of math Olympiads, and it was something that I actually started doing since I was quite young already. So that didn't stop till I think it still hasn't stopped. I still enjoy going for maths Olympiads, and I think that really did help show that I was interested in maths outside the school curriculum. That's one. Another thing that I took advantage of when I was in the UK, I actually did my A-levels in Oxford, and it's quite ironic because I attended a lot of Oxford maths public lectures at the Maths Institute in Oxford. So it's quite funny how I actually ended up applying to Cambridge instead. But I think that really did help me explore areas of maths which I wouldn't normally have explored within the school syllabus. It was something that really broadened my horizons in terms of my maths knowledge and what areas of maths I've been exposed to. So public lectures really helped me. On top of that, books as well. So popped over to Blackwell's a lot of the times when I'm in Oxford, and go to the maths section, pick up books, and just read interesting maths, get involved in maths related stuff, and that's basically most of the supercurricular activities I did.
Jacx?
Yep. For me, I guess I'm pretty much on the opposite end of the spectrum, in the sense that I did not do Olympiads, but what I did and wrote about in my personal statement was books I've read, and also just my involvement at school. So I didn't really do science-related competitions that were like national or international level competitions, but I wrote about how I participated in school level events and what I learned from it, and also talked about the books I read and what I learned and reflected on it. And I guess that just shows that we do have a diverse range of applicants who are admitted. So if you are not an Olympiad winning applicant, don't just think that, I don't have a spot in Oxbridge, because I did get in, and I think it just shows that there is a range of people who do get in, and just try your best. If you have the grades, you have the potential of getting in, as long as you demonstrate your ability in the interview or in the admissions test.
Actually, our social media communications officer is in our studio helping us, and she's at the High Commons. She's just posted saying that there's been an SOS just issued by the Ministry of Health asking for volunteers. So perfect opportunity for any of you medics out there you've got to be over the age of 18. We had this before after the Carrie interview. So if you're over 18 and you want to volunteer, the Ministry of Health is asking for volunteers. All right, so we have had a really important question about exam centres and where you can do the admissions tests if you're not doing them in your school. James, where would people do those admissions tests?
Absolutely. So there are local testing centres all over the world, and so on our websites, on the testing pages of our website, you're able to see information where you can that will link to Cambridge Assessments, who run the tests, and the local testing centre. The whole setup with Cambridge Assessments is that there are local testing centres available for students in many different areas. We do know, obviously, with local conditions can be different for different students relating to lockdowns and these kinds of things. But it's really important that students, potential applicants, are really engaging with this in advance, that they're checking the local testing centres by going to the CAAT website. Roshan's just posted a link which we can share with you all as well. So if you can't find a local testing centre, then there can be arrangements put in place with CAAT and your schools. Schools can apply to be local testing centres, for example, if there are no testing centres available. In Kuala Lumpur, I think you'll be pretty well stocked, and I think it's most likely to be the British Council locally, I would assume.
Yep. Okay. And there's a question about. Look, I mean, we've just got kind of 5 minutes left. So quick sum. What is the
very quick one, Emma. Sorry, Emma. There's a very quick question at the bottom, which I think is an important one. How would you recommend students prepare for the entrance tests? I think that's probably the single biggest fear that some of the students have. It's a different style of test from what they're used to. How would you recommend they approach that? Maybe we take Roshan first.
Yeah, so with the admissions assessments, there are some specimen papers and some past papers online. So if you visit admissionstesting.org, that will take you to the Cambridge Assessment Admissions Testing site. There is some more information about the structure, and I think it's really good to have a proper understanding of that in advance. So for some subjects, it's about extended written pieces. For other subjects, actually, it's much shorter answer questions, but of course, a lot of them. So having a think about the format and ensuring that you're ready for that. I think one of the challenges with some of the admissions assessments is the time. So it is just a good practice, a good habit to get into, to writing under the time constraints. It really isn't long when you look at how much there is to complete. For the BMAT in particular, the biomedical admissions test, there are quite a lot of resources. For some of the other subjects, it is perhaps slightly more limited, but I'd recommend, say, on the website, there are the papers there. And as I said earlier, don't worry that you won't be able to answer every question. They are deliberately challenging. They are designed to stretch you. And so there will be those that when you look at them, you just think, how on earth, will I answer this? Well, you just have to break it down, take a moment to reflect, to really try and understand what the question is asking, and then build your answers accordingly.
Yeah, I would add, thanks, Roshan. I would add, very similar from my perspective, from our perspective, but I would just add, don't necessarily over practice past specimen papers. It's very tempting to do that, I think, especially when you see 10 years worth of past papers on our websites, and you think, yeah, I'll go through all those, and but actually, my advice really is to do no more than 2 or 3 in the lead up to your test. I think it's very much about, just as Roshan said, to familiarize yourself with the way in which questions are asked, how they're formulated, and practice one of these within timed conditions as well, because of course that's different. So do practice under those terms, and don't worry too much if you find them incredibly difficult. They are designed to be. They're very difficult for everybody. So yeah, no over practicing, but just familiarize yourself with them. And both universities have very comprehensive information about every aspect of taking a test, the deadlines, the types of tests you need to take for each course, all on our website. So really important that you really do engage with those parts of our websites thoroughly when you come to make an application, so you know exactly what you need to do.
Thank you for that. I think the point there, we always say this to our students, is that you can prepare, but you can't revise. Malaysian students, of course, have a very specific revision, sort of almost rote learning obsession that they kind of grow up with. What we would say to you guys who are applying is that that's not really the way to approach, Oxbridge entrance tests, or indeed Oxbridge interviews. You really need to be yourself, and by all means prepare for these tests, but don't get obsessive about it, because you cannot revise them. They are designed to test how you think and respond under pressure. Back to you, Emma. I can see we're right on the borderline.
Okay, so I'm going to ask Mark one question, and then I just want everybody to just kind of sum up their key takeaway to leave students with. So Mark, obviously we work in school where people apply and they don't get in, and Sometimes I think I cry more than the kids when they don't get in. But for people who apply and don't get in, what do they get from it? Is it worth going through that emotional trauma and all that work?
It's a really good question. I mean, what I would say to you guys is that you've got to know yourself, right? I mean, are you a hypersensitive person who is going to be destroyed by the rejection? If you're, very stressed, highly strung, I would say probably avoid putting yourself through the whole experience. If you can shrug it off, I mean, in the great scheme of things, who cares, right? So you go somewhere equally good. You really have to approach it, I think, given the numbers that are going to get in, with a degree, with a very kind of phlegmatic approach, and the whole experience itself, making you focus, making you, think about different things, building all sorts of additional skills. They're bound to help you. But please, do not pin all your hopes on getting in, because there's obviously an element of luck in it. Not all the smartest kids get offers from our point of view. And, it's always the same, right? Sometimes the smartest kids don't get the offers and you're thinking, what? And the less able kids do. Maybe they had a great interview. Maybe they're face fitted. I mean, you can know, it's an art, isn't it, rather than a science. I'm sure the Oxbridge people would agree that they are not scientifically picking out the 5% smartest kids. Clearly not. So you need to approach it, I think, with in the right spirit. I would say to students, if you're confident, if you're a sort of a happy kind of student who just wants to give it a go, why not, right? You've got nothing to lose, provided you can handle rejection. And this is the problem, actually, because a lot of the students who apply have never failed an exam. They're top students right throughout from primary one, and suddenly at 17 you get this knockback. If you can handle it, try it. It can't do you any harm. That would be my take.
Yeah, and just treat it as a learning experience. And
of course, you'll do some extra reading. You'll think beyond the syllabus. You'll do a few test practices. Apart from that, but what I would say is to students is that don't get obsessed about the Oxbridge entrance, and forget about your A2s, right? You start school again in September. You've got a lot of stress and work on your plates for A2s. Don't let the whole Oxbridge thing kind of overtake you and overwhelm you. Again, if you can't handle both, then perhaps you're not the kind of person who should be applying, because although it is fun at Oxford and Cambridge, it is quite stressful. There's a lot to do in an 8-week term. It's not like other universities in that sense. So you've got to cram everything in, your sports and your social life and your work and your reading. It all has to be condensed. So it's a very
intense.
It's intense. Yeah, I was going to say pressurized, but it's not. I don't remember it being a pressurized experience, but maybe that's me. I was doing literature, so it's a lot easier than having to do maths or hard subjects like you guys are doing. You just read a few books and chit chat to your tutors. It's actually a very pleasant thing to do. I think some subjects are a lot more stressful. I mean, if you're doing chemistry or engineering or things like that, law, they're very time intensive. Yeah.
Okay. So final thoughts from Roshan.
Thanks, Emma. Two, I suppose, final reflections from me then. The first one we talked about earlier, but both universities are welcoming, are diverse places, and are increasingly international in their student body. So regardless of your background, regardless of your previous studies or your approaches, if you think that you would fit in well, and if you think that you're a good fit academically for the universities, then do make an application, absolutely. And I suppose my second point is just that there is a bit of administration ultimately involved, especially between September and December. So be organised, check the deadlines, check when you need to apply to UCAS, check for Cambridge at least when you need to complete the additional questionnaire, check what admissions assessment you need and if you need to register, check if you need to submit some written work, and check about interviews, how they will be, when they will be, if indeed you are contacted. So just be organised, double check the deadlines, and reach out for support from your teachers, from your counsellors, from the various different groups you've heard from today, as well as the universities and the colleges. If you're in any doubt, there are people out there to help you.
Thank you. James?
Yeah, really just to extend a little on Roshan's second point there. In terms of support, we've obviously heard from Jacx and Ryan today about how their organisations can help you and support you with your application, any aspect of it. And I think it's also fair to say that us in our admissions teams as well, in our admissions and recruitment teams, we're also very much there to support applicants. We give advice, we run lots of sessions, certainly from from next month up until the end of the application cycle, really to support applicants. And we'll be running lots of these. So really just to advise anyone who's considering making an application to our universities to really tap into the resources. You'll find all the information about the events that we run online. You'll find plentiful resources themselves as well. We do find that a lot of students and occasionally counsellors don't look at some of the information we do have online, for example, and it really is very, very plentiful. So do avail yourselves of all those opportunities and resources. And finally, I think just to extend a little bit on what Mark was saying, it's not the be all and end all in many cases. It's about the right fit for you. You've got to feel comfortable for the next 3 to 4 years of your lives. So you've really got to try and identify which university environment that will be. So it's to not put too much pressure on yourselves. If you think that what we've been discussing today sounds like the right sort of opportunities for you and the right option for you, absolutely go for it. As Roshan said, we're increasingly international and we're a very welcoming environment. So all the very best. I would finish off the same with any applications that you're making.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Brian?
I'll keep this quite short because I think we're running out of time. So what I will say is just be brave. Be brave, take that first step. And there are a lot of avenues through which you can get help. So if you're unsure about things, Google, search up, ask CUMaS, ask OUMC, that there are always people and places where you can get help from. So that's all I would say. Your journey has just begun. It's still a long way to go for everyone.
Yep. One last thing is just to apply if you love your subject. I think that's the main thing, because you would have to study it for 3 or 4 years, 8 weeks in a pressurized environment. So if you do not love it, I would, in all honesty, say do not apply to Oxbridge. But if you do, please do apply, and we will support you every step of the way.
Okay, lovely summing up. All right, thank you so much for joining us, Roshan and James and Ryan and Jacx. Thank you to Mark for helping me do this, and thank you to Liana with our tech support. And I hope we have a flurry of emails for people contacting us with more questions and requests for help tomorrow. So thank you to joining us. Thank you for your questions, and thank you to our speakers today. And good night, I think.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys. Bye.